Hey everyone, welcome to today's video. Welcome to the Gamey Daddy channel. Welcome to my developer log number 2 on my game development learning journey and trying to experience what it's like to actually work in game development, learn the process, and know the process from a different perspective in order to have better information for my audience members who are gamers, who are seasoned and veteran gamers, not just gamers, people who have played video games and experienced different kinds of video games over the decades, by the way. This is not just a community of noob gamers. You guys inspire me to dig deeper. And so those of you who know, this game development journey or this learning journey started out with a lot of our discussions. And I wanted to go ahead and just log the journey with you guys and show you kind of some of the past things that I had to deal with in my learning process and eventually show you, where I am in the entire learning. Now, the footage that you're actually watching was one that I decided to record at the time that I was working on trying to develop, what it would look like to make a small settlement. And that footage was actually recorded on the 10th of November, 2020. And, what's really interesting in these particular, video footages that I saved was to just kind of log the journey on what I was doing at the time that I started. And for me, building a small kind of a world, a representation seemed very important at that time. But little did I know that the most powerful tool in building a video game is not the game engine. It's not your knowledge of development. It's actually a piece of paper. Now, you may wonder and say, but how do you mean a piece of paper? Well, let me try my best to set up this entire conversation, and then I'll see if I can convince you that a piece of paper is probably one of the strongest things that you can have. And I don't think game development is the only unique place that you can use a piece of paper. I think you can use it in pretty much anything that you're trying to create if you're able to, follow specific rules or finally come to terms with what you need to, write down or what you need to put in perspective for you to be able to achieve what you're trying to achieve. So I picked up this particular landscape from a gentleman named Joe Garth. Some of you may or may not know who he is. He's a level and environment designer. And what he does is he makes kind of pre-made world landscapes so that you can get your level going. You can build upon the landscapes that he's already made. So he made this very small Arctic level. And I was thinking, I think I might just build a settlement around it just to kind of see what all is going on. And usually when you watch videos like this, they do the footage in, fast, or speed, they speed up the time frame of the play, whatever it is of the footage. But I'm not going to do that. And that's on purpose because I want you to see the painstaking, experience in its realistic form. I don't want to give any, impression that I'm really some guru at this. No, I'm a noob. I am inexperienced. I don't know what the heck I'm doing most of the day. So that's kind of what I want to emphasize more than anything else. But nonetheless, it's been a lot of fun, and it's also been a lot of stress at the same time. Don't get me wrong, in learning how to do all of this stuff. And just to spoil all of this entire settlement, I scrapped the entire project, by the way, having spent multiple hours in building this. In fact, this particular footage is 50 minutes long. And if I were to maybe fast forward to the end for you guys, what you're going to see is I was able to put 3 of these huts down in 50 minutes and build some weird fences around them that I, after everything, didn't even like it, which is crazy because you would have thought that, in putting it together, there was probably something that I was looking for. But ideally, I didn't know what exactly it was I was looking for. Now, here is why I made my video premise about the most important tool in this entire journey. The most important tool being a piece of paper means that you're going to use that piece of paper to actually plan and make sure that you map out a lot of your steps before moving forward. I don't know what AAA companies do. I don't know what game developers do in general, but from listening to some more seasoned developers, they have sworn and attested to the power of being able to plan out, a lot of what it is that you're trying to do before you actually start doing it. So that means you're going to take the time, you're going to get a piece of paper, you're going to write down the things that you actually want to accomplish, and then you're going to eventually get invested in building and trying to execute those things that you want in your game. And here's what that piece of paper is going to show you. Number one, it's going to show you what you're capable of doing. And number two, it's going to show you what you're incapable of doing. So another thing too that I believe that this particular piece of paper concept will help do, or did help me with, was it helped me realize that time was of the essence. So I don't necessarily, know everything about this whole game development process from the AAA side or from the corporate side. But when I think about how long it takes to make these video games, and you listen to game developer, conferences and hear game developers talk about their process, there usually is something that comes to mind. And that's a lot of time wasted trying to prove a lot of concepts that they eventually have to scrap. And I think that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think in their case, they have more resources to test out concepts and see if they would work, and then find out what is actually in their minds best for them as a development studio, and also best for them to deliver to their own audiences. But then on the indie side, when you listen to indie developers talk, indie developers will tell you that you don't have that time and resources, and so you have to be very wise. And me being a single person working on this project, I think I fall into the category of indie dev. Even though I'm just a student of this whole process, I think I kind of fall into the indie dev thing. So I have to follow the rules of the indie developer to be able to see progress in my learning. And so what that helped me do was eventually figure out that, hey, I have to start writing things down. I have to start writing down what I want to execute, start writing down systems that I want to build, and then start investigating if those are systems that I feel are necessary, or systems that I shouldn't even bother about because they don't add any value for me as the person who's creating them. Now, like I said, I recorded this footage in November of 2020. And I have to tell you that it wasn't till at least March of this year that I finally picked up that piece of paper and actually started writing down things that I wanted to do. So all those months were all spent somewhat wasted walking and trying to navigate my way through the dark without giving myself any direction. But once I started to catalog the things that I needed to get done, I found out that my progress actually did, move very fast. In fact, as we speak, even though I may have scrapped this project, I think I have a lot more, knowledge and a lot more progress than I did in these past months. And I've been able to, in 2 months, accomplish way more than I did when I started. And so this is something that really has shown me like, yo, this whole thing is no joke. And it brings it back home to this entire pandemic thing that hit, that hit like in 2020, when developers, pretty much had to deal with all of the different restrictions depending on their country or depending on the place that they worked from. It was kind of incomprehensible in a sense. A lot of people didn't understand, why would there be a break in, delivery of these video games? What's the excuse? Some people had to still do their jobs and all of that stuff. But how is it possible that in game development that, developers could not, find the time to actually work on their DLCs and all of that stuff? And, to be very honest, at that time, I didn't necessarily understand too much of it until, this whole process started, and then it started to make sense. Now, in my case, I'm the only person working on this stuff. And yes, when I had my time at home, I could work on it. But again, another thing that makes development of our mainstream games kind of difficult is because these teams have to work, closely knit together. They have to actually work, hand in hand. And they usually set themselves up in a way that allows for that free flow of information, bouncing of ideas, and streamlining development processes. In fact, there's a game developer conference that some of the developers that worked on the AI in the Division 1 actually did. And one of the things that one of the developers said was, being an AI programmer, one of the things that helped them at Massive Ubisoft was that they actually started sitting down together with their game designers in the same area. And he said what happened was it was easy for communication to actually flow from one side to the other, because the gameplay programmer has a framework on how he sees games being developed, and the gameplay and the game designers usually have other frameworks. But it's good for that collaboration to happen. With the COVID, all of those links were severed. And so that added another layer of complexity. So if you look at the multitude of video games that were delayed for the 2021 release, I think this is a fundamental understanding that we as gamers already do know, but in my case, in just working with this, it just, dawned on me pretty hard, because if I needed somebody else to complete a process for me before I could move further in anything that I was doing, if I wasn't the only one working on this and they were affected the same way I was affected by, say, the entire, COVID restrictions, I can understand how that could be or create a huge dent in the development process. And so what that means and what that says is, at the end of the day, a lot of these big development studios, even though they may have been hindered by the whole development process, in their development process by the whole COVID and everything, they still seem like they have their master plans. And that's something that they can always come back to. If you get what I mean. They have gameplay designers, they have designers of different aspects of the games that actually chart out and actually frame everything that they feel like they need to accomplish for the game in different aspects, and they use these as kind of like their guiding light. And I wish I had known this, and I wish somebody had said this to me initially when I kind of started this journey. I believe it would have made things, I would say phenomenally or exponentially simpler in the process. But it was a good way to learn. It was a good way to learn the hard way. And I don't think I'll ever deviate from that piece of paper. And I think anybody who wants to actually engage in anything of this sort or of this magnitude will benefit largely from it as well. But let me hear your thoughts in the comment section. This is something that we're just going to be thinking through and walking through the whole game development process. And I think it's going to be exciting to see what the conversations look like, here in the next few weeks. But again, thank you very much for listening and for watching the video. I appreciate you guys so much. Hopefully we'll talk soon. Peace out.